Iran's military muscle show today became quite familiar. It's a familiar response from the regime, but so have calls from international groups and from President Obama for Iran to be held, quote, accountable, whatever that means. What would it actually take to get Tehran to change its ways? Anne Bayefsky is a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, an international policy think tank, and she is executive director of Human Rights Voices. Thank you very much for being with us. When President Obama addressed the General Assembly of the United Nations, and indeed when he was chairing the Security Council meeting, he already knew of Iran's secret underground nuclear plant. And here's what you wrote about it. I'll quote you. Yet the president deliberately refused to put Iran on the agenda of the council summit, the same council that he claimed bore responsibility for responding to Iran's threats. President Obama does not have the political will to do what it takes to prevent an Iranian nuclear bomb. What should he have done, and what would it take?
Well, he should have done mostly the opposite of what he did do, which was to go to the General Assembly and even use the word "if Iran refuses to comply with its nuclear non-proliferation obligations." And then it goes to the Security Council, and just so it's clear, he was the chair of the Security Council meeting, so that he chose the agenda. And he had a draft agenda from the UN Secretariat that said nuclear non-proliferation Iran, and he removed the word Iran and put the generic study of nuclear non-proliferation and nuclear disarmament. So he used his opportunity of a summit of heads of state to adopt essentially vacuous drivel that does nothing to forward actually Iran disarming.
And vacuous is probably a polite term. Even the French president, of all people, seemed stunned. He said, how could we justify meeting without tackling Iran's nuclear ambitions? Which invites my next question. Do you think that this president has already made the decision to allow Iran to go nuclear, including weapons?
Yes, I do. I think that, although of course it's not being said, and you're not going to hear it in any direct way, in any way, shape, or form, but the mere fact that they all knew exactly what Iran was doing, and they held this meeting. Yes, he was upstaged by Sarkozy, but they hold this meeting without Iran on the table. Why did he release it the following day, the information, as opposed to the day of the Security Council? It's because he doesn't have the political will, and he certainly doesn't have the Russians and the Chinese on his side for serious sanctions. So given that, and his foot dragging in his General Assembly speech, where he talks about another 12 months to really get serious this time, it seems to be self-evident that he doesn't have the timetable, the seriousness to move it forward fast enough to make a difference.
Well, if you're correct, and that he has already decided to allow Iran to go nuclear, was he therefore lying in that famous address in front of a Jewish audience during the campaign when he said he would, quote, do everything in my power to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon?
Let's put it this way. The President Obama is turning in to be the president that's best characterized as the mouse that roared. Lots of tough talk and no tough actions. That's become the watchword of his presidency. Yeah. So, you know, that's his style. Unfortunately, Iran, the most dangerous country on earth, the lead state sponsor of terrorism, is on the verge of acquiring the world's most dangerous weapon. And we can't afford a president who's just big on words and won't follow it through.
We got to make this real quick because I'm out of time. But you keep a close eye on the United Nations. Here's a list of all of the UN resolutions, including sanctions on Iran. And yet it has not altered their behavior, and a great many people think nothing will. Do you think the United Nations itself is impotent to stop Iran from gaining nuclear weapons?
Well, they're not only impotent. The IAEA, the Atomic Energy Agency, has actually basically run defense for Iran. The UN has facilitated Iran's moves by passing resolutions which simply spin out the time, spin out the clock. And as long as President Obama thinks that the UN is where it's at, it tells you that he's not serious about preventing an Iranian bomb.
Anne Bayefsky, a senior fellow, Hudson Institute, thanks so much.